Hey guys, today we're in the shop. We're working on a couple projects. We have here an S2000 with a K20C motor. Welcome to another episode of VTEC Academy. You're about to get schooled. A few years ago, I designed a K20C kit for the S2000 for a racer. It didn't go anywhere. The mounts were originally made using a 3/4 inch adapter plate, and actually that turned out to be not a very good idea. But what happened since then is Science of Speed has started selling this kit. They're using the brand new crate motors from HPD, and they made a kit that makes this a lot more of a bolt-in type of thing. So let me kind of show you a little bit about what they did. One thing they did is they designed a thicker adapter plate. Now the flywheel on the K20C is much larger than it is on the F series engine, so they made a thicker plate that then allowed them to have room for the flywheel. It's still, of course, going to use a K20C clutch. Then they made mounts actually to work with the stock S2000 mounts, because they figure a lot of people are going to be using this on the street. Now some people are going to be racing, so what's happened is we are redesigning our kit for the people that want to race this car. So it's going to be using these, the Hasport billet mounts, and I'm in the process of making brackets. These are the original brackets I made for the swap way back in the day. We put these in after putting the mounts in that were manufactured by Science of Speed. We decided to go ahead and put our mounts in there, figure out what the differences are, because they moved the engine slightly and we want to, of course, match their setup. But we have set it up to remove our mount slightly, and our kit will place the engine in exactly the same place as they did. So it should be pretty good. So right now I'm wrapping up both of the mount kits. They should be ready probably in the next week or so for actual sale. So if you're interested in putting maybe a K20C in your S2000, I would contact Science of Speed. They have all the stuff you need to do it. They have the mounts, they have the adapter plate. There's also a bunch of other parts that go on the engine, you know, basically for water, for coolant and stuff like that, because this engine is quite a bit different. And they're working on several different solutions for engine management. They're going to have this thing all figured out. I think they have already delivered 2 cars to customers. Now they are trying to kind of expand that market a little bit. And by the way, the K20C, you may or may not know, we also made a mount kit to put it in the NSX, the first generation NSX, and that's something that we should bring into production here pretty quickly too. I got to make a couple changes on one of the mounts and also figure out the shifter. But once that's done, we'll put that in production too. There is one of those cars driving around, Ravi, at We Don't Lift. You may have seen him on our show before. He actually sells safety equipment. He has an NSX that he runs a K20C in it, and it's probably about 450 horsepower in it, and the car is really fast, and that engine is a great engine in that car. So anyway, guys, I've got a few more things to do and get this all up and going. But right now, you need to sit down at the computer and draw it all up. Okay, well, we got the new brackets done. They're really close to the original ones I made back in the day. We had to make a few little modifications to it. Now what I have to do is I have to redraw these to make sure they're correct for the application we've got here. Like I said, Science of Speed, when they redesigned the kit, I originally used a 3/4 inch thick spacer plate. They made it quite a bit thicker, moved some other stuff a little bit, but we had kind of a cool idea in order to get the engine in the exact same place here as we did on their car there at the shop. Since don't have their cars here at the shop, let me show you this cool bracket we made. I had the idea that we wanted to make sure that we got this in exactly the same place that we did with the car from Science of Speed. So I cut a couple of little brackets and gave Science of Speed some parts, and they made this cool bracket that sits on top of the steering bolts. Then the crank pulley bolt goes right in through this washer. So it mounts on these 2 bolts right here, which of course are the same on the car. And then the crank pulley sits in the center. And that's how we made sure that we got it in exactly the same place Science of Speed did. And that with the Science of Speed rear mount, and perfect. Came up with the mounts. So tomorrow I'm going to redraw them, and we're going to cut them, bend them, and throw them back in the car one more time and see if they fit. We got a winner. Well, we have our mounts. Now I need to put these puppies into production. I'm going to make one minor change over here on this side just so we can put a fourth bolt in. But looks like we've got our finished up mounts. I'm going to pull them off real quick and just kind of show you guys a comparison of the ones that come using stock mounts that you can get from Science of Speed. You'll also be able to purchase these from Science of Speed as well with the Hasport mounts if you want something a little bit stiffer, say you're racing the car or just looking for something a little bit more durable than stock mounts. So I'm going to pull them out right now. We have just kind of a comparison here of the mounts. Science of Speed is going to be making mounts that use the stock a mount kit that uses the stock mounts, which is nice. People want, you know, something that's smooth and nice. Although honestly, the Hasport mounts actually are pretty smooth in an S2000. But regardless, you know, they want something that's going to be just like stock. So they've come up with brackets that are going to allow you to mount the engine, the K20C1, and they'll work for the K20C4, by the way. The K20C1 in the S2000 using the stock mounts. And these things should, like I said, idle like stock and be super smooth. So this is going to be one of the things going to be available with their kit is this set of brackets. This set of brackets to work with the stock mounts. I do suggest putting new mounts in it, just in case yours is a little bit worn. You don't want to be tearing them with all the extra torque you're going to be having. The other thing that's going to be available through Science of Speed and through Hasport is these mounts here. These are the ones that use the Hasport mounts. This is not the final design. I'm going to make one more tweak to this particular bracket. I'm going to make kind of some access to this particular bolt. It'll be an Allen bolt. And on top of that, we will probably put some bracing to kind of spread the load. This is kind of a long arm. This right here, these three bolt holes right here are actually for the intermediate shaft. We're going to include this fourth bolt as well, and then put some bracing in there also. But this is how the Hasport kit will work. You have the low side of the motor and the high side of the motor. These brackets will sit in there on your subframe, passenger side, driver's side. But they should be available probably by the time this video comes out. We'll put them into production probably later today and have some ready for sale in the very near future. I'm going to bring the production mounts over to Science of Speed. And while we're there, let's go ahead and take a look at one of their cars that already has a swap in it so you can see all the other parts that go along with the swap.
So today I have 3 S2000Rs that Science of Speed has built recently using the K20C1 engine, which is the engine from the Civic Type R. I wanted to give you a brief breakdown of all of the components required to get this engine to work in the S2000 chassis. The first category to discuss is the engine itself. So the really awesome thing about this program is Honda Performance Development has made the K20C1 available as a crate engine. Science of Speed is one of 4 companies that are authorized to sell that crate engine, and it's a great option for retrofit, specifically because you're not dealing with junkyard engines. What that means is everything's new on the engine, including the wire harness. So you don't have to worry about broken connectors, that sort of thing. So the next category of parts to discuss is the engine mounting solution. Now, Science of Speed offers 2 options. One option is to use the factory mounts. The other option, now available from Hasport and Science of Speed, is a Hasport mounting solution. That allows you to include a stiffer urethane bushing in this application, great for racing applications where you want a little bit more engine control than what the factory engine mounts offer. The next category to discuss is what Science of Speed calls the intake manifold adapter and filter kit. Essentially what that is the intake manifold in the Civic Type R points the other way. Obviously that'd be a problem in the S2000, being that we've taken that transverse mounted engine and made it longitudinal. So Science of Speed has taken the intake manifold and flipped it 180 degrees. So what that kit includes is this machined aluminum adapter that effectively rotates the intake manifold, this adapter for the throttle body that puts the throttle body in the right position, and the intake kit, of course. And that also gives us a really cool opportunity to add port injection. We'll go into those details in a little bit further along in the video, but essentially that allows us to add 4 auxiliary port injection injectors. The next category to discuss is the exhaust downpipe. Now the downpipe for the S2000 with this engine is different than the downpipe found in the Civic Type R, and it's actually flows a little bit better because we don't have the packaging constraints that the Civic has. The next category to discuss is the transmission adapter. So Science of Speed has taken the K20C1 mounting pattern and allowed it to work with the S2000 transmission. That also allows us to place the engine in the correct position in the engine bay. This engine, although it's actually quite a bit lighter than the F-Series, surprisingly, even with the turbocharger components, it's actually taller, wider, and longer than the F-Series engine. So being able to place this engine in the engine bay was a little bit of a challenge, but Science of Speed has been able to do that successfully. Sixth category is the engine coolant kit. Now, essentially, the packaging, the way that Honda has packaged this engine in the Civic is we have a lot of the coolant components in essentially what is the rear of the engine in the S2000. That's things like the thermostat housing and all of the accessory ports for that manifold. Science of Speed has been able to fit this engine into the S2000 without having to cut any of the rear sheet metal here, any of the frame or the core support. So in order to do that, Science of Speed developed a billet machined adapter manifold that fits on the rear of the engine and takes off those ports, allows them to flow to the radiator. We've got a inline remote mounted thermostat housing that goes on the lower tube. So that allows that engine to fit properly and for the coolant to work properly. Now the next item to discuss is the intercooler. Science of Speed offers 2 options, either a front mount solution, which you see typically on turbocharged vehicles, but we also offer this V-mount solution, which adds a twin pass high flow radiator, high capacity radiator, and the intercooler mounted in that V formation. Essentially, that allows us to get as much airflow as possible through not only the radiator, but the intercooler as well. Dramatically improves cooling efficiency for this engine, and it's turbocharged, so it does generate quite a bit more heat than the F-Series. You may have heard the Civics, especially the early Civic Type R, has heat management issues, especially on the track. This V-mount solution takes care of that. Engine runs cool and efficient all the time, whether it's on the street or the track. The next category of parts to discuss is the fuel system. So obviously this is a direct injected engine. So you have 4 DI injectors and a high pressure fuel pump. Science of Speed has put together a package that allows that engine to be fed properly by the fuel tank. It also allows us to expand the amount of fuel that's going into the engine by the use of port injection. So that intake manifold that I talked about, we've been able to add a fuel rail and 4 port injection injectors, which allows us to dramatically improve and increase the amount of fuel that's going into the engine. More fuel, more power, right? So essentially that becomes really important when you start using fuels like flex fuel E85, which requires a lot more volume to make the same amount of horsepower. Now there is one solution, which is to upgrade the high pressure pump and the DI injectors, but if you're using a ECU that's capable of it, using the port injection, we can keep all of the factory fuel system in place. The last category to discuss is our engine control package. Now essentially what the engine control package is the ECU itself, but it's all the other accessories to make it work. And one of the best things about this program is Science of Speed has developed a true plug-and-play solution for that engine control package. So not only do we include a layover harness that's plug-and-play to the engine, but we also include a plug-and-play chassis interface harness. And what's awesome about it is that chassis interface allows this retrofit to be truly plug and play. It connects to the S2000 ECU connectors and the various chassis connectors that requires no cutting of the S2000's wire system to make that work. You're not having to build a wire harness, you're not having to splice and solder wires. Everything is plug and play, and that's super awesome. So Science of Speed recently finished these 3 S2000s. Just to give you a quick overview, we have one with the Honda Performance Development engine control package here, developing over 300 wheel horsepower. This one is using the Bosch ECU. That's the factory ECU from the Civic Type R. We're producing over 350 horsepower on 93 octane. And the black S2000 there is producing over 380 wheel horsepower on flex fuel using the VTEC M142 and that port injection option that I discussed. Now, these cars are all capable of quite a bit more. The limiter to that horsepower is the factory turbo. There's a lot of turbocharger upgrades available on the market. Anything that works for the Civic will also work for these engines, and that means 400 plus, 500 plus with a built engine is capable. These things are absolute rockets on the track, and I'm sure you're going to really enjoy it. If you have any more questions, check out scienceofspeed.com.
I want to thank you guys for joining us. Please think about liking and subscribing. Thanks for clicking on us.